tried to plead and tell him we shouldn't be, but he just wouldn't leave. He kept choking me and I couldn't breathe.
Many think that these lines from the song Brain Damage from the album Slim Shady are some kind of a joke. However, that's not true. In these lines, Eminem recalls how he was bullied in school.
Beat up in bathroom, beat up in the hallways, shoved in the lockers.
And he will never in his entire life forget that specific incident on the toilet. When he was only 9 years old, older classmate D'Angelo Bailey beat him up so hard that Marshall thought he wouldn't make it out alive. He was small, plus he had a big mouth, recalls Bailey. Marshall got a brain hemorrhage. Blood oozed right out of his ears. He didn't slip into a coma, but he periodically lost and regained consciousness for a few days before these fainting spells disappeared. He got so many health problems, bruising, multiple wounds, lacerations, nausea, and so on.
My main concern was to get him, medical treatment, and because he was, when I found my son, he was on the floor and he was having a seizure.
His mom, Debbie Mathers, also had a tough life in which terrible things occurred.
I was sexually assaulted by my one stepdad when I was 12. He didn't get the job complete because he was arrested.
According to her own words, there were always strange men in the house, and they were always getting drunk. Debbie was abused as a child, and the saddest thing is that her mom was also abused. Eminem's grandma is called Batty, who was delighted by the news that her mom is dying.
The way you beat and abused a little child, an innocent child. I said, you're going to hell, don't you?
Debbie wanted her own family, and she wanted to be a good mother for her children. She gave birth to Marshall when she was 18 years old, and she thought that her family's life would be good. However, the reality was far from it. When Em's dad had to take over his dad's position at a hotel, he started hanging out with other women. Naturally, Debbie didn't like it, and one day, he told her that she had to get her child and get out of the house. Debbie left Bruce because of his constant beatings and his alcoholism. The dad left to California, and after that, nobody saw or ever heard from him again.
You were dead to me before you died, me tear no shed. Should I have made a mirror at your funeral?
In his book, he spoke out about his dad in the following paragraph, and I quote, "I won't lie, I will always have questions about my dad, but I understood that I will never get answers. So he can go to hell. He can piss off. I don't want to know this guy. How much of a jerk do you have to be to abandon your own child or to speak to other family members in the way he talked to his uncle and not even call his own child, who never wronged him? There is no excuse for a parent to do what he has done. I don't give a shit if they're lost in Alaska or somewhere in the goddamn desert. I would find my daughters."
And his dad never wanted anything to do with him. Marshall tried to contact him. Debbie tried to contact him.
Eminem was exposed to weapons and violence from an early age. Of course, he wasn't a gang member, nor was he a killer. Todd Nelson, whom you've just seen, used to give Eminem, who was 7 years old at the time, a .45 Colt to shoot at beer cans. This very Colt was used by Todd to kill a guy in a supermarket parking lot. He was found guilty in the murder of a guy who allegedly molested children. In 2004, and on his birthday, he shot himself, which shocked Marshall. According to M's words, he was a well-intentioned guy who just couldn't function in society. He had one more uncle called Ronald Nelson, even though he was 3 years younger than Marshall. He was always up to some crazy stuff. When he was 7, he burned down Eminem's grandma's house. At 11, he put a hamster in a microwave, and it exploded in there. Apparently, he learned these from Eminem, who also did a similar thing. According to Debbie in her book, "One day I came home to discover his guinea pig wrapped in plastic wrap in the microwave. He's cold. I'm warming him up," Marshall said. "As I switched the oven off, the guinea pig wasn't cold, he was dead." Marshall was distraught as I explained his pet had gone to heaven. He insisted we bury him properly, in a shoebox with little holes cut into it so the guinea pig could breathe on his way to the afterlife. Marshall didn't always understand just how delicate some creatures were.
It all started when my mother took my bike away, cause I murdered my guinea pig and stuck him in the microwave.
In 1992, Eminem went through one of his roughest patches ever. It was all because, at the end of '91, Ronnie shot himself in the head after a breakup with his girlfriend. This upset Marshall so much that he couldn't even go to the funeral. It didn't sit right with him to look at his uncle lying there without a head.
I read about your Uncle Ronnie too, I'm sorry. I had a friend for himself over some who didn't want him.
Ronnie did Marshall a huge favor. He introduced him to hip-hop. he brought him the soundtrack for the movie Breakin', which included Ice-T's song Reckless. He then started digging deeper in the topic, and when he was 14 years old, he understood that he wanted to become a rapper. And that same year, he met Proof in middle school.
I first met Proof with Goofy Gary on the steps, said I was born handing out some flyers.
Eminem was taken aback by Proof's kindness toward him. One day, Proof made Marshall get rid of his secondhand moccasins that his mom got him. They had the same shoe size. One day, Proof said, "What the hell do you have on your feet?" He gave him a few pairs of nearly brand new Nikes. This was one of those moments where Eminem wanted to cry from happiness. Proof taught him to stand his grounds and be a man. He was the first person to show him how to fight. When they would get home exhausted with bloodied fists, they would have an exercise where one of them would say a word, and they would see how many words they could rhyme with it. By the age of 18, he was unsure whether he wanted to become a rapper or not. He thought it would be better to become a basketball player than a rapper. He played basketball fairly well. But what about rap? He recorded a few cassettes. However, they weren't selling well because a lot of people couldn't understand how a white guy could become a rap star. At around the same time, Proof quit his job and decided to dedicate his life to hip-hop. He started hanging out with hip-hop artists, and everybody thought that Proof would be the first to sign a contract for a solo. However, at the age of 20, something happened that could have gotten these two locked behind bars. The whole thing is that sometimes they would shoot at random people in Detroit with paintball guns. One day, they stopped by Wayne State University and went up to the kids who were skating on their skateboards. Proof sneaked up behind one of them and shot him 3 times in the back of his head at point-blank range. Can you imagine how painful that is? And next up came the police sirens. One of the cops beat the crap out of him. One cop pinned Eminem on the lawn while the second pinched his earring and said, "You like wearing earrings, don't you, you little faggot?" While Proof was forced to eat grass, literally. The cop grabbed a handful of grass and shoved it in his mouth. Then a female cop said they got video cameras. After that, they decided to get them in the car. They didn't want them to be photographed because of the way they looked. After this incident, the guys got rib injuries. As a result, they were sent to 2 Detroit prisons. And while they were there, they found out that one of them also shot someone in the male genitalia. The guy wanted to sue them, and they would have been sentenced for a minimum of 5 years. And of course, they didn't have money for a lawyer. And Eminem said, "Screw that. Here goes our rap career." However, because one of the victims didn't show up in court, Eminem and Proof got away with it. Everything changed when the hip-hop shop opened up. There, and for the first time, Eminem was able to express himself and show that he could rap. People jumped and screamed, and the bosses asked Proof where he found this white guy at. After being humiliated from his early years, he received the love that he had dreamt about.
Stop about to be top and take this building down, because that's the only way your record shop.
He won the annual battle at the hip-hop shop, and then, in '97, he participated in the Scribble Jam in Ohio, where he got to the finals and lost. He returned home completely depressed. But this wasn't the end of the full struggle. He lived with 2 roommates in one room. One of the guys told him that he has cheaper rent and that they should move in with him. He told his friend, "All right, he has cheaper rent. Screw it. Let's move in with him." As Eminem says, "We were paying out rent to him, but the SOB was keeping our rent and wasn't paying the landlord. He took the rent, saved up his own money, and bounced on us. So one day we come home and all our shit's out on the fucking front lawn." This period of time in his life was incredibly shitty, especially that he was hoping for a contract with Jive Records because he knew a guy there. But it turned out that he just worked there at the mail reception department. All of that led to one night when he tried drugs for the first time while recording the song Rock Bottom. All he could think about at the time was to finish the song, and that would be the last song he would ever record.
It's full of empty promises and broken dreams. I'm hoping things look up, but there ain't no job openings. I feel discouraged, hungry and malnourished, living in this house with no furnace, unfurnished.
Then he went to Los Angeles and lost in the finals of the Rap Olympics tournament. For the final, they were giving away Rolex watches, which he wasn't sure were real, but the $500 was real. That was a lot of money for him at that time. He went back home with the thought, what's next? After all, he was returning home to nothing. The end of the year 1997 was terrible for Marshall. He had $40 in his pocket. He was fired from his job, and Haley's birthday was coming up soon, and he didn't have money for a gift.
I'll never forget that Christmas. I sat up the whole night crying, cause daddy felt like a bum.
On that trip to Los Angeles, he gave his cassette to an assistant at Interscope Records, which is where Dre found Eminem, and the song My Name Is was released.
Hi, my name is Chicka Chicka Slim Shady.
And legal proceedings against Eminem had begun. In this song, there were some lines mentioning his mother.
How you gonna breastfeed me, Mom? You ain't got no tits.
Debbie was deeply affected by these words. In her book, she said, this line was horrible and upsetting because I'd contracted toxemia blood poisoning when I gave birth to him and hadn't been able to breastfeed. Eminem also accused her of using drugs.
I just found out my mom does more dope than I do.
The mom sued her own son for $10 million, yet only received a $25,000 settlement. But $23,354.25 of that went to her lawyer.
Get ready, 'cause this is about to get heavy. I just settled all my lawsuits. You did it!
A couple of years later, Eminem released the heartbreaking song Cleaning Out My Closet, in which Eminem recalls the situation when Debbie said that she wishes Eminem would be dead instead of his Uncle Ronald.
Remember when Ronnie died and you said you wished it was me? Well, guess what? I am dead. Dead to you as can be.
Sometime after the funeral, Debbie called him, and they began arguing about something unrelated to Ronnie. During the argument, Debbie said that she wished Eminem had died instead of Ronnie, which she confirmed in her book, and I quote, "I couldn't believe what was happening. I hate to say this, but I'm sick of you," I screamed. "I wish this was you instead of Ronnie." That comment came out of nowhere. I didn't mean it, but I was just so rattled. I phoned Marshall straight back. "Son, I am so sorry, I didn't mean it," I said. He hung up on me. I've apologized to Marshall so many times for saying I wished he were dead instead of Ronnie. Of course I didn't mean it. I'm so sorry I said that. It's something I will regret to my dying day. The Marshall Mathers album contains a song under the name Kim. In the song, Eminem talks about a traumatic relationship. The song was written back in the year of 1998.
You were supposed to love me! Now please, bitch, please!
However, the most intense song in Eminem's career is the song 97 Bonnie and Clyde. In the song, Slim Shady asks his daughter to help him get rid of her mom's body and throw it in the ocean. And the most interesting thing about it is that the song includes vocals by Haley, which seriously angered Kim.
Mama's messy, ain't she? We'll let it wash off in the water and me and you can play by ourselves, can't we?
As M's former bodyguard, Big Nas says Kim is Debbie reincarnated. In turn, Debbie says that Eminem often got psychologically abused by Kim. She saw how, one day, Kim took off her shoes and hit Eminem with it, while Marshall stood there and did nothing about it. If they didn't fight for even one day, this would be considered something abnormal by those around them. Generally speaking, it was a serious toxic relationship. Despite their relationship being a total mess, they got married in 1999. However, that didn't make things better. For Kim, the marriage was to tie Eminem to her, because women began noticing Eminem, and in her opinion, he started developing an ego. In the year of 2000, Kim saw how Eminem made fun of her using a doll pretending that it's her, and she saw the positive reaction he received from the public.
I made it home and I could not gather my senses. And I went upstairs in my bathroom and I slit my wrist and ended up in the hospital.
She, like Debbie, sued him for $10 million. However, nothing came of it. And who else sued Eminem? The very D'Angelo Bailey who beat Marshall up in the toilet. He wanted to sue him for $1 million, but But he was also unsuccessful. The judge, who penned a section of her judgment in rap-like rhyming language, determined that the lyrics were clearly overstated to the public.
The lyrics and stories that no one can take as fact. They're an exaggeration of a childish act. Any reasonable person can see that the lyric could only be hyperbole. It is therefore this close ultimate position that Eminem is entitled to summary disposition.
The main tragedy occurred in 2006. Eminem had never before felt such intense pain before. And this pain still accompanies him to this very day. The pain that became part of Marshall. On April 11, 2006, Proof was shot 3 times by Mario Etheridge, once in the head and twice in the chest, after a dispute broke out during a game of billiards at the CCC Club on 8 Mile Road in Detroit. A pool game between Proof and Keith Bender turned into a heated argument and then escalated into a physical altercation. Eminem recounted in his book, The Way I Am, how precious Proof was for him. Proof was my key to everything. It was the only reason as to why they stopped beating me up. I won't sugarcoat anything. He was my pass to the ghetto. He stood up for me as if we were brothers. I lived in an attic, but if it weren't for Proof who got me into the rap game, I don't know where I would have been. You definitely would have never heard of me. He was not only able to bring out the talent in me, he also saw the diamond in the rough. This doesn't mean that Proof had no talents. Proof commanded the entire rap music scene in Motor City in the mid-90s. People loved him. I lost my best friend, but I guarantee you that 1 million people would say, yeah, Proof was my best friend as well. Well, Proof and I had a mutual understanding. That's why I say he was my best friend. I was his best friend.
You telling me this guy's white? This dude's white. Man. Dude.
No, sunburn.
Sunburn.
I'm red.
He's red.
Because of the death of a close friend of his, Marshall's problems with drug addiction worsened. But luckily, he was able to overcome addiction and lead a sober life. He reconciled with his mom and apologized for everything that he has said about her.
But I'm sorry, mama, for cleaning out my closet at the time. I was angry, rightfully maybe so. Never meant that far to...
In turn, when Eminem was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, Debbie Mathers barely held back her tears of pride as she congratulated her son on his achievement.
Marshall, I could not let this day go by without congratulating you on your induction to the Hall of Fame. I love you very much. I knew you'd get there, and it's been a long ride.
He reconciled with Kim in 2006, but they later separated, and they now maintain a friendly relationship with one another. She currently looks like this. In 2022, her mother died, which led Kim to want to end her life by taking pills. However, thankfully, the doctors managed to save her. In a recent interview, she said that now she is clean and feels good after a 45-day stay at a rehab center. She also maintains a good connection with her children and with Eminem as well. To the question of how often they see each other, she responded saying, "Not often, but enough."
Good day, but a bad husband.
Upon listening to the album The Slim Shady, you would think, what a repulsive maniac. But after the Marshall Mathers album, you understand that the origins of Slim Shady are in Marshall Mathers' abandoned, rejected, and love-deprived heart that's carrying a huge burden. The abandoned child whom, in the end, became Slim Shady.
Eminem is the rapper, Slim Shady will kill you, and Marshall Mathers is the person, like, behind the whole, mask.
The next video that I recommend you watch is about an incredible friendship between Eminem and Dr. Dre. Thanks everybody for watching, subscribe to the channel, and see you soon.